Tim, let's talk a little bit more about pressure and how you compartmentalize it and how you deal with it and how you turn it into a positive. Because you would have been there many an occasion where, I'm going to use Wimbledon as an example because it's moments away. And so what do you do to cope with the pressure that you know is coming your way of being, a big name in the draw, having to perform, crowd expects, nation expects? How do you manage that internally and externally?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a good question. And so for me, I've always found that psychology really, really interesting. I think to break it down and to really understand that pressure is all self-inflicted. So it's really about me managing my mind. And certainly pre-performance, so when you're getting ready, you're wanting to control and focus on the controllables, and that is your preparation and making sure that you've practiced, you've been in the gym, you've done all the right things that you need to do to give yourself the best opportunity of performing at an optimal level. And once you get into performance mode, so once you get on to the court, you are really trying to focus on the process and not the outcome. So, in simplistic terms, when you're playing a best of 5 set match and you're serving in the first game, you serve the first point, you're in the juice box, and I say to myself, well, I'm going to serve and volley out wide to my opponent's forehand. I'm going to serve and volley where he returns. I'm probably going to volley into the open court. You stand up and execute that point, and you might win it, you might lose it, but there's that process. So when you are at 5-all in the 5th set and it's 30-all, what's different? So it's still the same side of the court. You're still standing in the same position, looking to execute the same plan. But in the back of your mind, obviously, you're saying, well, it's 5-all in the 5th, it's 30-all. If I serve a double fault here, the crowd are going to groan. I'm going to be break point down. If I lose my serve, I'm going to be having to break serve to stay into the match. And that is where your mind has done two things. It's gone into the future. So we've gone away from the present because the only thing we can really control is that one moment. But all of a sudden, I'm thinking about the outcome. I'm thinking about the consequences, the what ifs. If I miss my first serve here, I've got to hit a second serve. And the pressure, the expectation of the crowd. Oh, I don't want a double fault. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to shout at me. And so that's where having the ability to really, the clarity of thought to be consumed by the process. And that's where, the best ones are able to do that in the biggest moments of the match.
Have you been able to apply that thinking in life? So outside of being on the tennis court, because it is a particular way of thinking. Have you been able to sort of take that?
Yeah.
It's like in most people's work, it would be transferring skills, but I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah, it is. And I think psychology is fascinating. And, nervous energy, when I walked on court at centre court Wimbledon, was I nervous? Yes, I was nervous, but that's a good thing, because first and foremost, it shows that I care about what I'm about to do. But secondly, it's how I deal with that. So to recognize, God, my legs feel like jelly, my legs are shaking. That's normal. So now what am I going to do with it? Am I going to say to myself, oh my goodness, my legs are shaking. I'm so nervous. I'm not going to be able to play. I can't run. My legs are too heavy. No, this is normal. Now, what do I do about it? So I've got to start moving my feet. I've got to think about short steps. I've got to think about taking extra steps to get into position. So again, that's focusing on the process. And you certainly, you've got to, I think, go through these experiences, to be out on a big stage and to feel that, to be able to recognize it. And I think, again, you talk about pressure. Pressure is an interesting work in not just in sport, but in life. I think also within sport, confidence is a very interesting word. And if you were to say to young people, in sport, well, I all hear about these top players, men and women, they talk about confidence. Well, what is it? And, I think they would sort of say, oh, well, it's when I feel good and, I like this or that, this surface or, these conditions. And, in more specific terms, confidence is the sum of your thoughts. It's your thoughts added together. But what you've got to understand, that can go both ways. So if you're adding together a lot of negative thoughts, oh, I can't do this and I can't beat him and his backhand's better than mine, you're adding together a lot of negative thoughts. So that's no good. And so for me, when I reflect on my confidence going into Wimbledon, I added together a lot of positive things. It's my favorite tournament in the world. I love playing on centre court. I love the crowd support. Grass is a good surface for me. I've worked hard. I've prepared well. I've training, my injury prevention, my recovery. It's all the pieces of the puzzle. I've ticked all the boxes, and now I'm excited to get out there. And so, that piece around, pressure and confidence, I think is so important. Again, I actually went to a little primary school here this morning for a friend of ours because pre-Olympics and was talking a little bit, and we got on to one of the parents actually said, what advice would you give for any aspiring young player? And I said, look, we've all heard the cliche, practice makes perfect. And I said, that's not quite true. And I said, practice makes permanent. And I think that is a very good phrase, because if you ingrain bad habits, they'll become permanent. Practice bad habits, they'll be permanent. But if you practice good habits, you practice the right way, technically, physically, mentally, they will become permanent. And that's a really good thing. And that's where, you can take that into any area of life, in great good habits. When you were young, it just makes life a lot easier. I played golf when I was young, from the age of 5 or 6, and there are some good habits there. I wasn't allowed to ski until I was 35. I've ingrained a lot of bad habits. I'm not very good at skiing. And so, I think that those are some interesting elements around pressure, around confidence. The psychology, I think, is fascinating.
And also, I'd say that the best tennis players, when you're watching them, are able to let a point go. So if it doesn't go your way, they don't hold it. They just move on and let it go. And I think that's a good lesson as well for all of us in life. If it isn't quite going according to plan, it may well be the universe's way of telling you time to move on.
Exactly. And again, in simplistic terms, psychology is so straightforward. You've got to stay in the present. Just play that next point. Because as you rightly said, that last point, it's gone down in history. You cannot change it. So why are you going to worry about it? And again, as you say, the players that have the mental strength and the ability just to forget about it. And that's where, again, one of the funny things that I've always said, a lot of people have said, if you could have a selective memory, that would be amazing. So any bad shots, bad experiences, you just press delete and you've got no recollection, and all you store up is best shots, best wins, best matches. I think that would be so powerful. I mean, if someone comes up with that, I'd pay good money for that.
Yeah, well, I suspect if Elon Musk is listening or watching, that's probably already in progress.
I hope so. But in sport, that would be so powerful.
Don't you have, but now though, don't you,
memory.
in a broadcasting role now, don't you have selective hearing? Because I've had that ever since the beginning of time for broadcasting for years and years and years. Always having somebody in your earpiece with live television allows you the incredible skill of selectively being able to zone it out and zone it in depending on what you want to do. Don't you find that?
I think it might be hereditary. I definitely have selective hearing within my family, but I think they have selective hearing when it comes to what I say. But no, you're right. If you worked in the media and you're got a director or someone in your ear, and you've got to be able to listen to bits of it, but still get on with what you're doing. So there's definitely some transferable skills there.
Do you enjoy that aspect? What's your favourite game that you've actually had to watch and commentate on?
Well, my first Wimbledon final, I started working for the BBC in 2008, and that was Federer Nadal. Nadal's first victory at Wimbledon, 9-7 in the fifth. It was virtually dark. That was the best final I've ever seen, and I was nervous for that because I was new to commentating, and I really sensed that this is such an amazing match. I didn't want to say something completely stupid that was going to detract from the viewers' pleasure. So I don't think in the 4 3/4 hours, or however long that match was, I don't think I said that much, but that was probably a wise decision.
Oh, well, look, have a brilliant Wimbledon, have a brilliant championships this time round. And I hope to catch you, which I'm sure I will, no doubt, on Church Road or otherwise.
Definitely, Georgie. Thanks so much. All the best to Ben, and look forward to catching up. All right, take care.
Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through, and at that point I just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolf.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.